Hi, welcome to Friday Focus Mental Health Matters. I'm Jane Smith.
And I'm Dionne.
And we are excited to be here today. Today we are talking about something really important, and it is you are not your label. And Danielle and I have talked a lot about this, and it's a really big subject. When we really started researching it, that's when I thought, wow, this is a huge subject. But it's important to become aware that you have a label, maybe from childhood or teenage years, or especially negative ones, and how it's affecting your life. And when you can free yourself of this label that's not true, it is so healing for your mental health.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, do you have labels from when you were young, Danielle?
Oh boy. I thought about this a lot, and some of the ones from when I was young, I mean, I feel like I got tomboy a lot. That might have been a label. I really like to be out there dirty in the mud, but I don't think it was a lot. Some of the labels from when I was a kid, they don't resonate as much or ones I don't want to share yet,
Yeah.
More later in life for me. I think the first biggest label for me was teen mom. Like that was, I was a teenage mom and I was really young when I had my firstborn. And I remember that teen mom. So one of my friends' parents were like, oh, don't hang out with her anymore. So it was just all of a sudden this or people staring at you, or that's a teen mother. So, Jane, I think it's a big topic, and I love researching all of these topics with you for the week and looking deeper on it. What I'm learning too is that, well, it's kind of what I thought after the week of looking into it. We need to break free from all of this, and also that there is some helpfulness in having some labels too. So is it harmful? Is it helpful? Where are we with all of this? And I would argue too, in my own experience, that having good labels or labeling people beautiful or smart, or, those things that we think are great when we praise our kids this way, or when we tell people that they are a certain way, how that creates a fixed mindset. So I'm really interested in language and the language in an environment and how we could promote creativity and care that way.
I think interesting, the one label when you said a label being like beautiful or smart. That's an interesting one, because I look at if I think it's a good label to say you're beautiful, but the difference between saying I am beautiful, like everyone's beautiful inside and out, but the difference on a label is like, oh, you're the pretty one. That's a label. Right. To be, I am beautiful, and to affirm that in children, and people say, I am beautiful. That's not surface of, oh, you're the pretty one, and that's all you'll ever be. Like that. But I am beautiful, I think is different than a label. Do you know what I mean? It's hard to.
It's like a self-fulfillingness that's happening there in your affirmation. So, I feel like labels do promote self-fulfilling prophecies in a way. So we do behave according to the way we name ourselves. And so that's why affirmations might be powerful. If we name ourselves in a way, I am energetic, I am, kind, I'm going to get a bunch of money, right? Like all of this idea of manifestation, we can, I think, change our behavior with our thoughts. So I think we know this, right? Our thoughts can control our behavior if we're not conscious and do some, meta awareness and control our behavior with our higher thinking. Yeah. So I think it's important that we recognize that there is a helpfulness in the way that a label, or we define our label individually, matters. Yeah. So for children, like when you said, smart and beautiful, I had a very intimate conversation early this morning with somebody that I don't think I can share their name, but they told me that when they grew up, they were called smart, and they remember that. And they were like, but I wasn't that smart, right? Like, but I had to work so hard to keep that identity. And and I see that too, right? Like if somebody says you are something, it's fixed. So how much anxiety does that create? Anxious feelings about like having to keep that, right?
The thing is,
look at women and all the plastic surgeries and all the things. You must be beautiful. And we all know women have been placed on this pedestal of having to be beautiful. This label of beauty and sexy has created so much pain and changed so many women's behavior. What they spend, how much time they spend getting ready, how they look is so important instead of how they serve or what. Yeah.
It's true. And then men too, all of us men are like, you know, they have to be tough and they have to do boys, they don't cry. And you have to, so all of us have these individual labels that happen from our parents that aren't meaning to, our teachers, our peers.
What was your childhood label that you remember?
Mine, I really look back and I thought I knew as a child I was always the shy one. Like I was a middle child of 3 girls. So I knew I was shy. I'm not shy, but I remember being that I am the shy one. And then up until teenage years, I became the fun one. And my dad would actually introduce us. My older sister was the perfectionist and the smart one. I was the middle one that was the fun kind of trouble one. And then my younger sister was the baby. And what's interesting is all of those have taken us into adulthood and they're all hard to shake. And it almost makes me cry because my older sister is like having to be the perfectionist and the smart one. And she just sometimes wants to just chill and not be perfect. But that's her role, was kind of that my parents placed in it, and we carry it. And I, being the fun trouble one, I had to live up to that. Oh, I'm dad's fun one. My dad loves me because I am fun. And I had to, and sometimes I don't want to be fun.
Well, I'm imagining being called fun when you're young could be a very innocent thing, but the fun one as a teenage girl, that could translate into danger in some ways.
Yeah, I had a terrible teenage years. I did get in a lot of trouble. I feel like I lived up to that label, but I think the powerful thing is as an adult, when you become aware that you have a label, you don't even know, you can go back to a time and think, that time that was painful in my life, or why am I having trouble in relationships? Why do I not feel loved, or whatever it is? And you can go back and you think, you remember this moment, and it's something that is not true. And when you realize that it isn't true, it's just someone else put this label on you, that you can heal yourself and you can be free of it. That's where you can be like, oh, okay, I'm not the screwed up middle child. And another label was, for me, was a high school counselor who I respected, and I didn't attest to see what subject I could go in for university, like a aptitude test. I was so excited, kind of wanted to do speech pathology, and I was thinking, he looked at mine and I'll never forget it. And I was like, what can I go to university for? And he said, no, you'd make a great wife and mom. And I was like, I'll never forget. My brain was like, what? And he goes, you scored high in sewing and cooking and you love children. You make a great wife and mom. And I was labeled at that moment. That held me for years on that's not that being a mom isn't a fantastic thing, but that's all I could ever do. I should never do more than being a mom. And I thought that was not true. That was not true. I had to work hard to let that go. And
so discovering your label. So you've had to really go through, it sounds like, this process of hearing that, living it out. Your behavior changed because of that label, it sounds like. So you might have postponed certain plans or even just kind of drawn to that label. And then, how you define that would be hard, because wife and mother is definitely a very important job in society. And it's I would say,
but you lose yourself.
And that discovery, it sounds like you went through this discovery journey and then recognizing, hey, questioning my thought, that's not true. So it's interesting that labels are a thought that's given to us, that we hold on to, that define who we are. And just the discovery of the label is something that can be really, really harmful. Like, wow, that person defined me as that way. Or it can feel like it's really, really helpful, right? So, for those that have a diagnosis, for instance, in mental health, right? So it can be really validating and be helpful to seek help. So help-seeking behaviors and validation and an understanding of criteria. It feels like, oh, okay, that's what's happening. There's a thing. This is called a thing. And for me, it was like, oh, I have anxiety. Oh, you have post-traumatic stress. Oh, you have complex post-traumatic stress. You have a major depressive disorder. Oh, and that means then you get this medication. And, all of a sudden I'm on some discovery path of something, and for me, when you get the diagnosis, it almost felt a relief. And then it was more of a journey to go like, hold on now, how is this defining my behavior? Right? I am not, so my anxiety, my depression, now I owned it, like those things were mine. So then my behavior was explained through my diagnosis and it became this cycle. And now I'm like working really hard to like, I want to name it because I've been labeled those things and it makes sense when we look at all the medications and all of the therapy that I've tried to, you know, that I've gone through, and recognize just how healthy I feel now. And I don't define myself. I don't behave under those criteria anymore. So it's
really powerful because the way you describe it, when you say my anxiety, my depression, a lot of people do that and they don't realize they own it. Well, and people that are ill too, people that have, my diabetes or my cancer, they actually say that you should release it and just say the anxiety or the depression, not yours.
That I'm having. That's really important. Or my symptoms with my cancer. This is my pain, or naming the pain in my body, like really breaking it down, because those things are different for everyone.
Yeah.
And that's the interesting thing. Is like we experience these things differently. And so when we get placed in a silo, it could potentially limit us. And I would say it actually can greatly limit us. And so I look at that too. And what about children, Jane? From early on, you're talking about, being labeled as shy or the fun one. How about kids that start out school, a 5-year-old child, let's say, rambunctious and fun and all of the things, developmentally, maybe, on the spectrum at a different place where the system puts them. So they show up in kindergarten and they don't want to sit on the carpet so much. They don't want to listen so much. They're not ready. They want to go and poke. They want to go and prod. They want to go and explore. And so they're sent down the hall to the behavior room. And the teacher calls mom and the behavior kid. Eventually, the mom's like, what's going on here? I'm seeing a lot of this not listening at home. And so I just wonder too, because even, in circles of conversation, when you look at support groups, my autistic child, my deaf friend, my, whoa, I think our language is powerful. It is,
because I worked with children with special needs for quite a few years, and the one of the most important things was not to label them as the child, like it's a child with Down syndrome, not a Down syndrome child or ADHD child, a child with it. I even look at it now as like they don't have it, it's not theirs, but you didn't want to label them.
Yeah, no. Well, and I think people
they aren't the label. We're all human, that's our label.
Well, that's what Dr. Sampaio said, right? If anyone ever gives me a label, let it be human.
And that's all we all want to be. And I think the key too is that it puts you in a box when you have this one label. So none of us want to be in a box. And I think it's okay where children are concerned to, because we've done some research and we don't Danielle and I were talking about this too, is like, just as a disclaimer, we're just discussing this.
Yeah, I write about research when it's literally late at night, like sleuthing through my Safari.
Yeah.
Right. And also, lived experience. I do work in mental health. And so I don't want to say it's just like the 7 days of discussing labels. This has been some deep, rich conversations over many years.
Personal life experience. Yeah.
Right.
But I look at the children as, and this is some of the research I was doing too, is it says it's important not to label our children as something they are not. A label can take hold of them from becoming who they really are. Oh. And we need to cultivate our children, not raise them as how we want them to be, like cultivate them and who they are and all the things they like, not in a box.
Totally. And respect that idea that the brain is plastic, neuroplasticity. So there's spectrums of all of these things. And the worry for me is labeling can create lower expectations, right? So if I label a child with a behavioral disorder or anything like that, well, they can't. Yeah. This diagnosis, the criteria says that they don't do that. So they can't do that. So my child can't focus. They can't learn this. They can't do that. So there should be accommodation for them to do all of these things. And wow, so now we're relying on a system that labeled to accommodate a child.
And that's why we have to start with our children to raise them without these negative labels. I have a friend that I mean, we're in our 50s, and she was held back in grade 2, and she's a very smart woman, but because way back when they used to put the children back, hold back,
right,
you know, and for no reason really, and that has been in her brain for so long, like that really damaged her in the way of like thinking that she's not smart. I'm like, you're so smart. That was when you were 6, 7 years old. It's not who you are. It's not who you are.
Prophecy, and we're constantly going the other way. So when you're named depressed, I'm seeking happy. When you're named anxious, I'm seeking mindfulness. And it makes sense when we look in society and we see like, what's going past our news feeds right now, right? Like anti-stigma. Right? Like, we got to fight stigma. We got to fight stigma. Oh, we absolutely do. We have to work really hard to normalize big feelings and the stress that this world is putting on everyone. And the recognition that family dynamics has changed. Parents are working super hard. We're all out there having to perform, be beautiful, be relaxed, make a lot of money, be rich. Wow. Right? And then on the other spectrum, you see it being pushed. Be mindful. Be mindful. So it's like almost like we're being forced into extremities.
Yeah.
And I really like the idea of recognizing that we all go through these things and we all are riding the wave of big emotion. And how much does stigma, the whole stigma, create more opportunity for the word anxiety to come across my screen, for the word depression to come across my screen? When I see it, I'm constantly reminded, you know, of this label. And then I'm reminded about the behavior of that label. And I'm like, is this like a marketing scam in a way? Like, could we actually not anti-stigma labels of anxiety and depression? Could we do better and anti-stigma emotion and feeling and being alive? Like, it's totally normal to feel.
Are you someone that does affirmations?
Well, Jane, I could take a picture right now. Right in front of me, there is this chalkboard and it says, you are not a label. And on there, it says, you are not beautiful, Danielle. You are not lovable. You are not safe. You're not broken. You're not traumatized. You're not a major depressive disorder. You don't have anxiety. You're not damaged. You're not cold. You're not fat. You're not fake.
Danielle.
All of these things. And so I went through this whole thing with affirmation. Then I started saying, well, hold on. A label is just a reward or a punishment we give ourselves. And when we do that, where does this come from? It comes from some hierarchy that's judging us. And you know what? I might not be all of those things in a moment, but in a moment, I might be all of those things. So it's on me.
Yeah.
And, you know, and when I look at, you know, my chalkboard over the last couple of weeks, I start going, it even says you are not a snowflake, because I do get that, you know, I'm like, no, I'm a radical left. Right? You know, like you start thinking, when you get a label, you start thinking of ways you're not labeled, right? And then it creates our behavior that way. So I kind of wonder about it a lot. I'm struggling with it all right now. And how
I really believe affirmations are really helpful in helping to get rid of the negative labels. So,
well, is it simple or helpful to have a label? When can it be helpful? When can it be helpful? Right.
See, I think, well, obviously people have labels as humans. We do, from doctors and architect and, oh, you're a stay-at-home mom, and we do have those labels. And I don't think they're all negative, because it's how I think we sort of, in our minds, sort of people and people's roles in society. But it's the ones that are in your subconscious that are holding you back, that are negative, that you need to let go of. Like women that think they're fat, or men, you know, that you're told as a young child that you were chubby, and then your whole life. No. So what do? You write, or that you, middle child, I never felt important or seen or heard. That was me.
Right.
So I write on my mirror, I am important.
So you think that a label could be helpful?
What?
So how can a label be helpful? So I know I can imagine having a child that has extreme severe behavior that doesn't fit well into different environments and is very challenging, and, you know, parents needing to define that so that they can get some support, because our systems are structured to need a diagnosis in order to get support, and so I wonder, is it helpful to be on a wait list that long, to get a diagnosis, to get a psych evaluation done? How helpful, I would like to know from all of those parents, how helpful was that defining moment? Did you actually get the help you really needed? And sometimes it's helpful to name, the behavior in a certain, a list of criteria. It's helpful. It's validating, right? It's validating when someone says, Danielle, I have some pretty honest kids, and my kids will tell me some straight up stuff, and sometimes it's really helpful for them to tell me that, it's so.
And it doesn't mean that it doesn't mean that you're being labeled. I think it's what's interesting. I don't know if you want, we were going to go, we were talking about children, and then we're going to end with kind of how to free yourself. There's a few steps you can use to free yourself from the label.
I like that. Yeah. And I'd like to touch too on my thoughts around freeing yourself.
Around what?
Around freeing yourself. For me, it's about recognizing what you've been named. And like you said, going through the journey, when did this happen? Is it true? Questioning your thoughts, because our thoughts are not facts. Our behavior is true. So how we behave can define either of that. It can validate us. We could fulfill this prophecy or not. So is it true? Do I behave this way or not? Can I be decisive and behave differently? What can I do about it? And I think it's important that we recognize that when we fix ourselves into a label, that we create less growth. So Carol Dweck's work on fixed mindset, growth mindset is really important to touch on. So if I say to little Johnny, you are smart, little Johnny's going to work his butt off to keep that label. And he might not actually work at all because he doesn't want to lose it. So it's important to recognize effort and growth and spectrums and beauty and diversity and all of the things. So I think to free ourselves, we have to recognize that we are unique and we're human and we're all just trying. We're just trying.
And with children, it's labeling their behavior, not the child. You don't want to label them. They aren't. If a child has done something, they're not bad. The behavior at that moment might have been bad or not good. It's not them specifically. It's you're not a bad child. Your behavior, this wasn't
me. So this is communication, and so I think it's important that we recognize that all of this, the diagnosis is kind of a way to define communication in a way. It's the way that we're surviving in the world. And until we see it through the lens of surviving and communication, our behavior is doing that, until we actually do that, we can't really get to the heart of the matter of everyone,
Yeah. The subject is huge.
Removes the opportunity for you to talk to me about what's, where was that seed planted in me?
Do you know what's interesting is when I actually realized I was holding onto this label of being the screwed up middle child, and kind of, I would say, blaming not my parents or it really wasn't them. It's me taking responsibility and being like, no, I'm not a screwed up middle child. I'm the middle child. Yes. Do I have to be a screwed up middle child? No. Right. For me to go back to kind of my teenage years and take responsibility for my own thoughts and decisions and not blame anymore. And then to be able to move forward and replace it with, no, I am important. I am smart. I am all the affirmations, and say it over and over till I started to heal that part of my brain that was believed.
What behavior changed as you're affirming yourself? So my question is, so you're thinking about your thinking, you're affirming this thought, you're saying this, what did you change about your behavior then by questioning your thinking?
By questioning my thinking, it was a long process, because until I was aware, you just go on in your life and have trouble, maybe not getting along with some family and being, one family member could say something that could just throw me to the ground. And then all of a sudden, when you start to become aware of these are just thoughts that aren't true. And it's this freedom comes over you when you let that go. And actually,
so when I think it's a really important piece, when you let it go, when you're checking in on your thoughts, you're doing a mind check there, which I think is amazing. And then what changed for you? So what did you do differently when you freed yourself?
I think, I don't know if it's anything I did differently, except I don't take anything personally, and I'm not able to let people do and be and feel the way they want without feeling that it's me. I have more confidence. And I'm just in better, more posture, because I know that I am important, that I'm not that label from before. So when I'm around family and friends, I'm like, no, I'm good. Like, you can say what you want to say. It doesn't bother me, because I'm not who I thought I was supposed to be. And so your confidence goes up.
As who you define yourself to be.
What was that?
You're showing up as you, how you define
your true self. Like, you can find your true self and be like, wait a second. Like, I am important. I am seen. It was just my thoughts that were causing problems, nothing else. It's only your thoughts. And so and that goes to, we should do our part of what we're not talking about. What did you say? I couldn't hear you.
Your thoughts are your enemy.
Yeah, and they can be once you control your thoughts, then you're. It's very interesting. So this was like Dr. Martha Beckett. She has an amazing article. It's called "How to Stop Letting Other People's Labels Define You," and so she says, quite often it's other people's labels that define us, and it's as simple as saying, "Is it true?" Of course, it's not true. Like, it sounds so simple, but so she says, but the most problems come from when you hang on to your own label. So someone gives you a label, you hang on to it, it becomes something that defines you. And so, and you repeat it in your mind, right? It becomes real. But to get rid of it, to free yourself, figure out what the label is. So every single person watching this, you need to, if you're holding on to something, or there's a block in your life, whether it's not being able to find love, or not, maybe you haven't gone on to university that you wanted to, or something that's holding you back, go back and really try to think, when did you start saying, I am not smart, or I am not worthy, or I am bad, or when did that happen? And so you go back, find this label. That's the key. So becoming aware, that's the first step. And then the second step is determining, is this true or is this false? Really look back. So if you were a young child, if I use my friend that was an example, when she was little, is that true that she was not smart because they held her back? No, that is not true. So for her, it would be like, that's not true. I was 7 years old. It wasn't my fault that someone put me back to grade 1. She was very smart. And then the third step is let it go and free yourself. And the only way to let it go is to, in my opinion, is to let it go and just repeat to yourself. For her, it would be like, I am so smart. And I just start to heal your brain and the pathways and create positive new ones that you can then be free. It's very freeing. And Peter Crone, I've told Danielle about this amazing guy, Peter Crone. Find him on YouTube. I'll definitely put a link to an interview he had. And he's called the Mind Architect, Peter Crone. He's brilliant.
Super interesting, he is. And I just want to question too about the whole idea of letting go of the label, because I think you just touched on a big, real piece there. So having a mental illness is being stuck. So they can say, you know, I've got this, you know, this label that I got from my childhood. I'm a bad kid. I'm a this, that. However, when you have a diagnosis, the hard part is the letting go part. So it's almost like your brain. So it's about, for me, what I'm learning is it's about being decisive in your behavior and using things like self-discipline. And, you know, it goes beyond the thought. We have to get outside of that and create a ritual of new behavior so that our thinking can be validated by where we are at right now.
Right.
And so for me, what's been really helpful is changing my behavior, making sure that I get up in the morning, making sure that I do things that bring me joy and pleasure. And so I can refer back to this and say, like, are you depressed? And I'm like, gosh, no. Like, I'm filling my life up with things that make me smile. And am I anxious? Do you have anxiety? And I'm like, no, actually, because when I'm feeling really anxious, I have my list of things that I do, just like when I feel like we're not, you know. So I think it's really important to let go and also make a plan, change your behavior, be decisive. Resilience is about being decisive. It's about doing something different. And although it might be awkward, and it's super awkward actually to do something against what you've been labeled, it feels like you don't belong in that space. that's when you're headed in the right direction.
Oh, right. Because you are a little behavior specialist. That's when you could ask me about behavior. And I was like, oh, no, would I change? Like, oh,
So what are you changing? The behavior, your thoughts and your behavior and emotions are really all connected. And we have no power over our emotions. We're living beings. We're supposed to feel big things because the world is that awesome and big.
Yeah.
And, you know, our thoughts become that and feed into that. Oh, I'm feeling this. Oh, I'm feeling that. And then we behave that way. And what we really know, the only truth is in the behavior.
Yeah. So our thoughts control how our thoughts create how we feel. Yeah. Our feelings create how we behave. Really,
our environment creates feelings and emotion, right? Emotion, you know, our thinking. I got to run, or I got to do this, you know. And then our behavior is part of that, and it's like a cycle. And they play with each other, right? Yeah. So we need to be meta about it, have metacognition, and think about our thinking, and recognize that our behavior is our power. And if
we are going to do a Friday focus on metacognition, aren't we? That's a very...
All right. I think we have some pretty cool doctors that want to join us and talk about that too, Jane.
But I want to say quickly
but
I want to say quickly about Peter Crone, just because I think he changed the way I thought about labels. Right. I was like, interesting. And then we probably should finish up. But Peter Crone, when he explained labels, he says it like, is if we're all born with a manufacturing label. And if we could take our manufacturing label out, like it would be, where were you born, Danielle? Vancouver?
New Westminster, British Columbia.
Okay, so your label would be a manufacturing label. Danielle will take hers out. It says, oh, Danielle Dionne, born in New Westminster. And she is, what was the label that would hold you back? She is anxious? Or what label would you say?
Child? I don't know. I mean, I had a pretty... I can't remember a label given to me as an early child. So I think that's interesting. So yeah. Oh,
let's use the one right in front.
Let's say that. Let's say this is
here comes we've taken Danielle's label up. Danielle Dionne from New Westminster, Vancouver, has anxiety forever. And that's heavy. So now if you take that label, so Danielle, if you look at that label, you're this beautiful girl, you're born just pure with no labels, nothing. And then if that label was in you, is that true?
No.
That is not true. So you take that label, you rip it up and throw it out. It is gone. It's not in you. You are free of that label, that title. It's not you. My girlfriend, if hers would have said her name, where she's from, she is not smart, will never be smart. No. Rip it up, throw it out. And sometimes it's good to do the visualization to just see yourself ripping it up. If you have to write it down and rip it up and throw it in the garbage, do it. Because
you are not your label, Jane. And I think that those on fire. It needs a visual. We need to think about what would our behavior look like and visualize what, if you didn't have that label, what would my behavior look like in the optimum way? And then make a plan. Get a coach or talk to a friend, get some accountability. I heard a great word, an accountability buddy. A teammate, an incredible human that I work with said that to me yesterday. You need an accountability buddy. It's an accountable buddy. So all these things we can do in our behavior that can shift and prove our label wrong.
Right. Awesome. Okay. I think we're done. Please comment, make comments. I mean, it's a huge subject. We can continue the conversation in the comments, but yeah, it's a huge subject. We could talk for a long time about it because.
Thank you, Jane. It felt like a bumble, but we did it. And I think we could talk for a longer time about labels. I hope that people caught on to some ideas there and we continue more dialogue here.
Yeah, even if they pick up, whoever's watching, thanks for watching, even if you pick up one thing that helps you. So next Friday, excited for next Friday Focus, we have a beautiful, beautiful girl. I labeled her. My niece, Sarah, is a graduate from Harvard University. She has her master's in divinity. She truly is beautiful inside out. And she is coming on to talk about the science of connectiveness. And it's just amazing to help people with depression, mental illness. And it's 4 areas of connectiveness. And it's all research-based.
So excited about this, Jane.
It's going to be amazing.
Yeah, I'm super excited. So I hope everybody that tunes in on Friday, next Friday, and right now, they go to Peace 360 Initiative and they start sharing with their friends and you know, if they want to join our movement, please do. There is a global movement happening right now, connecting mental health, conflict transformation, and yeah, and I'm so excited to be part of all of this. Thank you so much, Jane.
Hey, thank you. Bye. Thanks everyone for watching.